What's up guys, welcome to the 15th tutorial in our Python language basics. Here we're going to take a look at some examples of our if, elif and else statements in action. The three all kind of go together, so I figure we may as well stick them all in the same tutorial. So we'll start by covering the basic if statement. This will be just a nice easy intro. Then we can add an elif statement, and then we'll finish up with the else statement as well. I figure we should also throw in the ternary operator because it kind of provides a short form of writing an if else statement, and you'll probably see that if you start to examine higher level Python code, so it's best that you know what it looks like. So let's head on over to the code now. Right, last time we finished off in tutorial 13 with ranges. Don't worry, tutorial 14 was the previous tutorial. That was just kind of an intro into control flow. So let's go ahead and, as per usual, start up a new cell. Okay, so for this example, I would like to kind of bring things back to a video game example. And what we're going to do is we're going to simulate player movement. Now, player movement can be very complex. We're just going to think about something super simple where it's just kind of a two-dimensional plane and you can either move left or right. We're not even going to worry about jumping. So you press the left arrow, you move left. You press the right arrow, you move right. And all we're going to do is actually just print out what you can do here. We're not going to keep track of an X value or anything like that. We're going to keep things really, really simple. Okay, so basically there's two possible options we're interested in, left and right. Everything else kind of falls by the wayside. But for now, let's just pretend we can only move right. So we'll have a variable here and we'll call this key press. And we're just going to set this equal to, we'll say right. Okay, so this is going to represent right, this will represent left, and so on and so forth. So what we want to do is we want to see if the key press is equal to right. If it is, then we'll print that we're going to move right or something. So the way we create an if statement is like this, if, and then the condition. Some languages will use brackets, but not Python. So we're going to do if key press equals right, okay, and then we have to finish it off with a colon. So this colon signifies the end of our condition that we're testing. Okay, and then any code goes underneath, but notice how it's indented. So again, Python kind of gets rid of the brackets and the curly brackets notation. Instead, we have the colon to signify the end of our condition, and then we need to make sure everything is indented. So I'm just going to press tab there, and you'll need to keep cutting this consistent indentation. So in our case, all we want to do is print something like move right. Okay, if we wanted any other code, note how as soon as you press enter or return, then it keeps the same indentation. If you're done with the if statement and you want some other code, then you need to make sure that the indentation is not the same here. Okay, because otherwise that signifies kind of the end of the if statement. Okay, good stuff. So let's go ahead and we'll just run the cell. Okay, it should print out move right because these are equal. Okay, and just being a little bit slow, but don't worry about that. Okay, there we go. We get move right printed out. So what happens if this is something else? Okay, obviously this is 4 keys, but you know, that's fine. So in that case, we got nothing printed out, nothing really happened. And that's again what we expect, because right now we're only handling one specific case. We're just saying if these values are equal, then we'll do this. Otherwise, there's really nothing else happening. So that's where the elif can come in handy, because realistically we want to test multiple possible cases. So for this, we're going to say elif, and then we're going to put another condition here. So we're going to say if key press is equal to left, that's the other value that we're interested in, then we're just going to print move left. Okay, cool stuff. So the way that this reads now is we get to the if statement, we perform this test, this check. If this returns true, then we'll do this, and we'll ignore everything else. Okay. If there was any other code outside of the if elif, then we'd execute that next. If this test fails, we skip over this because we don't want to execute that code there, and then we perform this test. If this passes, we execute this. If this fails again, then again we still do nothing because there's no other code down here. If there was other code down here, then we'd execute it. Okay, so in this particular case, we run this and we should get our move right being printed. If this is left, we get move left, as you can see. And if this is something else, then we get nothing happening. Okay, now realistically there are more than 2 keys on a keyboard, and so we need to take those into account. So realistically what we could do is we could just have something like incorrect action or incorrect option being printed out. I know in a lot of games there will just be nothing happening if you press the wrong key, and that's totally fine. That's absolutely a valid option, but we're going to just do this just to demonstrate what's going on here, just because we're using print statements and we're not actually changing any of the positions or anything. So for this, we can use an else. An else will cover every other case. So it's basically, well, none of these tests pass, so we need to do something. We still want to execute some code, and so that's what we're going to do. So in this case, we'll print something like invalid key. Okay, so we'll go ahead and run this, and we get invalid key printed. So that, again, that's exactly what we would expect, because the first test failed, then we go to the second test, that failed as well, but we still want to do something. Now, I should say that doing this, having an else and then do this, is different from just having some code down here. Okay, the reason this is different is because this only gets triggered if these fail, whereas this will always run regardless. Well, I mean, this won't because it's nonsense, but it would always run regardless of the outcome of these tests. Okay, so the else only is executed if everything above fails, but any code outside of the if statement will be executed anyway. Okay. So once again, with any of these, if a test passes, it executes the code and ignores everything else. Okay, so that goes for if and that goes for elif. Also, if a test fails, then we go on to the next check, and we basically continue to do that until either one of the tests pass or until we reach the else statement. There is no check being performed here. This is just saying, okay, well, nothing else passed above, so we're going to do this regardless of the state of the program. Okay, good stuff. So hopefully that is clear. This is definitely can be a little bit confusing if you have never dealt with any kind of control flow or conditionals before, so I definitely recommend you practice this. Now, the final thing I wanted to bring up is going to be the ternary operator. And the ternary operator basically assigns a value or returns a value based on the outcome of a test, otherwise it returns a different value. Okay, so again, it acts kind of like an if else combo. Oh, by the way, actually, just quick side note, we can absolutely have if and else without the elif. Okay, so let's say, for example, I was only interested in the right key, then I could definitely cut this out, okay, and just have my if and else, and that's totally fine too. Okay, so back to the ternary operator. The ternary operator requires us to provide a possible value and then an alternative value. So this is a forced if and else statement, because we can totally have an if statement without the else or the elif. So the ternary operator would look something like this. We're going to create maybe a result. We can basically do the same thing as this or this. Actually, you know what? Let's pretend that we're only interested in the right or the left key. Okay, so we're going to ignore everything else. In that case, we could say something like command is going to be equal to move right if key press equals right. Okay, and then we'll do else, it's going to be equal to move left. So I know this is kind of weirdly formatted. In fact, in a lot of other languages, you'll have something like the test condition and then one value, then the alternative value. And in my opinion, I think that's a little cleaner. It makes a little bit more sense. However, this is just kind of how things are done in Python. So basically, we're assigning this value to this variable if this test passes. Otherwise, we're assigning this value. Okay, so this value if this is true, or this value if this is false. Okay, so that's kind of how it would work here. Now, it doesn't make too much sense in our case because realistically, we have to take into account whether the user presses the left or right or something else. So there are at least 3 cases. Okay, but this works if there are only 2 cases that we're kind of checking for. So a test case and then kind of the alternative or the fail-safe, but there you have it. Okay. In fact, let's say that we can only move right here. Maybe it would be better if we did something like this and then invalid key. Okay, and then you could print out command or do whatever. The final thing I should note with the ternary operator is it's actually returning a result. It's storing a result. Okay, whereas this, we can really do whatever we want with the if-else statements. See that we're not actually storing anything. We're just printing something here. You can't necessarily do the printing here. Here you're actually returning and storing a value in this variable. Okay, so that is it for now. Like I said, I do highly recommend that you try out your if, elif, and else statement combos. Try various combos. Try maybe an if and an elif together, then an if and an else, maybe just an if statement, so on and so forth. You can't have these without the if statement, just so you know. And maybe also try out the ternary operator. Once you're comfortable with that, we'll show you some other cool things that we can do with if statements in the next section. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next one.